Here's the truth. On a recent video out of Greenville, South Carolina, I screwed up, and so we are going to redo that today with some more thought and more information. Hi friends, welcome to today's bonus badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. If you were around for a really giant kerfuffle, a couple of weeks ago we posted a video that I was very dismissive of the homeowner and quite frankly jumped his butt way too hard. So right up front, I apologize for that. And in fact, we had a pretty significant discussion about this one among the ASP staff, and there was some significant disagreement. We sat and hashed it out, and not only am I inviting Mike Williver back to talk about this one again, I've also invited our Chief Marketing Officer and Director of Training, Neil Widener, to talk about this issue from a little bit more nuanced and thoughtful perspective. Today's video is made possible thanks to the generous sponsorship of companies like LuckyGunner.com. Please head to LuckyGunner.com and thank them for being a sponsor of Active Self-Protection. 911 received a panic alarm from this address. So the officers dispatched, it's like midnight, to see what's going on. Before the badge cam started, he's actually gone up, knocked on the door, rang the doorbell, announced himself. Now he's come up, I think either a second or a third time, and you see the homeowner here comes into view on, on our badge cam. Officer's gonna point a light at him. Guy, from what the officer said, pointed a gun at him. He did come downstairs with a gun and pointed it at him. The officer did shoot at him and hit him twice. We have badge cam audio from here. Let's listen in.
Sheriff's office! Drop the gun now! Let me see your hands! Let me see your hands! Throw that gun out the door! Throw the gun out the door! Yeah, throw the gun out the door. Let me see your hands.
Who are you?
Yeah, you pointed a gun at me.
Who are you?
The sheriff's office.
What are you here for?
Because we got an alarm call.
Oh my God, call the cops, please.
I am the cops.
Call the ambulance, please.
All right, where's the gun? Where's the gun? All right, don't move it. Are you the only one here?
What's wrong with you, man?
I'm up here.
Mom, call the cops. My God, what's wrong with you? Get the ambulance here.
Where are you hit?
And my groin and my fucking chest. The fuck you doing, man?
You pointed a gun at me, man.
You were in my house.
Greenville, send me 1051. I rang your doorbell because we got an alarm
really
call.
bad in my groin.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Don't you don't
10-4. Come here, hold this light.
Get the ambulance here, man. I'm gonna
They're
fucking
coming.
die.
They're coming. Just stay
You
with
shot
me.
me here and you shot me here.
All right.
Oh my God.
Just take some deep breaths.
Fuck!
What? What is
I
the...
saw lights and I heard the doorbell ring and I got it with my gun. I'm a concealed weapons guy.
Okay.
Get the ambulance here, man. I'm gonna die.
No,
Hurry.
you're not. You're not going to die.
Have you called the
Is the ambulance coming?
They're coming. They're coming.
I'm on my feet. I'm sleeping. I got my fucking CPAP.
Somebody hit a panic alarm for the love of God.
Nobody here.
What's the address here?
305 East Crest Drive.
That's where it came in from.
We don't have an alarm. We don't have an alarm.
Well, that's what we
Come
got
on,
this
man. I'm
much
bleeding
for.
really bad.
All right, hang on.
Come on.
Hang on. This is going to hurt.
No,
okay?
it's up. It's higher.
It's higher?
It's higher.
Let me see.
Shot me right here, dude.
Okay.
You motherfucker. Why did you do that?
Because you pointed a gun at me,
Dude,
man.
you came to my house at 12 o'clock at night. I'm sleeping. God damn, I gotta protect my house. Oh my God. Get the ambulance.
Go ahead.
Man, I'm gonna die.
They're coming. They're coming.
You motherfucker. I can't believe you did this to me.
I'm good. This guy's got 2 gunshot wounds.
The fuck? I can't believe you did this to me, man.
Okay, we're not going to talk about this right now. We're going to focus on keeping you alive, okay? So take some deep breaths and calm down, and you're going to be okay, all right?
Officer did hit him twice. He did recover. It was a pretty extensive recovery. If you go read the news stories that I've linked in the description, the homeowner here has sued both the department and the deputy, and we're going to think about some significant lessons.
You know, folks at home, when you make as much content as Active Self-Protection does, you don't always get it wrong sometimes, but sometimes you get it just a little off the mark, and I think that's what happened here. We heard you, we had internal discussions, and now we're going to talk about it again.
First thing I notice here right away, it is dark out here, which you'd expect. I mean, it's not exactly the middle of town. But I think one of the first things that comes up is that we might expect, if the officer really wanted to announce himself, for him to have his red and blues on, right? For him to have his cruiser lights going. And we don't see that. I don't know that that means that they're not there, but why might he not have his cruiser lights on, Mike?
Emergency vehicle lights are for a couple of reasons. One is to notify the public that you're on the side of the road, for example. Another one is to clear through traffic, to indicate that you're behind someone so they can either yield to be pulled over or yield to get out of the way, whether it's a fire truck or a police car. What they're not used for generally is if you're coming up to an alarm call, for example, you want to do as little as possible between leaving your car and getting to the door or wherever the access point is. You want to do as little as possible to draw the attention of any bad guys that might be there. So in the movies, you'll frequently see red and blue lights are flashing all around, during the scene. When in reality, I'm going to probably park my car where it can't even be seen from the front of the house, because if there is a crook there, and again, I'm not super clear on the nature of the alarm or what it was about, but if there is a criminal inside, if there is a burglar, I don't want him to see me before I get to where I'm in a position of advantage. So, but by the door, and at which point he knocks and announces, which is should ideally replace the idea of red and blue lights, notifying you that the cops are here. Because if we're going to play out scenarios where, and some people in the comments are saying, hey, people frequently, home invaders will pretend to be the cops. Well, that's entirely possible.
And we've seen it.
Yeah, and they could also get red and blue lights. I mean, you can get red and blue lights on Amazon. So the presence of red and blue lights is no more of a guarantee than him being in a uniform or announcing himself as a sheriff's deputy, in my opinion.
So I think with that in mind, okay, I get that. And as a homeowner, though, I think that we kind of expect that the cops announce themselves bigly.
Right.
And so when they don't, I think it goes, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so I think, Neil, I think that led to a lot of at least the start of the confusion here.
I think so, for sure. I think it's a reasonable thing to think that the homeowner is going to expect that he's going to come down. If there is a cop on his front door, he should know it pretty easily. We're told from when we're little till they put us in the ground that the reason cop cars are marked so we can see them, the reason they have lights are so we can see them, the reason all of these things are visual indicators for us to be able to know that this is a good guy and know that that's what's going on here. And in this scenario, based on what we know now we're playing Monday morning quarterback for sure, right? None of us are in that place, and I don't have any experience in walking up to somebody's house in the middle of the night. So I want to really gauge my expertise in all of this. But as I view this, I think it's a reasonable expectation that on a medical alarm, which is what we're told that this was, that there would be some sort of visual indicator other than a guy standing on your porch with a flashlight.
Yeah, I just don't know that it was a medical alarm, though. It was an alarm. There was an alarm at the house, which ended up being a medical app, but I don't know that the officer knew that.
And that's fair too, because the other thing is if the officer knew that was a medical alarm, you would think EMS would have been rolling already. So I'll give them totally the benefit of the doubt there. The news stories that I went back and looked at all talked about that it was a medical alarm from some sort of app on a phone kind of thing.
Yeah, I can address that a little bit. There's something called Assist FD or Assist Fire Department or Assist EMS, where the police are out actively patrolling. They're out in the community. Odds are the dispatcher who dispatched this deputy saw a little beacon on a screen saying, hey, he's 2 blocks away or he's in the vicinity right now. Most officers, most deputies, they're trained in at least basic first aid. So they will frequently send a law enforcement officer to get there as soon as possible to do whatever he or she can prior to EMS showing up. Now, if it were an EMS type of thing, if he knew that, who knows what he knew, right? I mean, who knows what he was told or what came over his computer. If he knew that, red and blues might have been reasonable. If it was assumed to be a medical emergency he was responding to, I feel like maybe red and blues would be a great idea if he's not in the mindset that we're interrupting a burglary or a home invasion potentially.
At any rate, he is now on scene, has knocked and announced. We do know that. He knocked real loud, announced himself. Now he's going to come back up. But of course, I think I didn't give enough benefit of the doubt to the homeowner our first time through this one to see the fact that it's kind of chaotic for him. The homeowner comes downstairs now and, again, he's on a CPAP machine. It's midnight. He's woken up out of sleep and he hears somebody banging on his door and he doesn't know who that is. And so his choice then was to then grab a firearm and go and investigate. And we can see him right here through the side windows. And it's funny, my house actually has something not dissimilar where I have these little side windows. And so I think a lot of people identified with this guy. Gosh, man, if I had a bump in the night like that, a big bang on my door, I'm gonna go investigate that. I'm gonna bring a gun to the door and I'm gonna be disoriented. But Neil, what do we think of the idea of even going to the door at this particular time of night? Do we think that going to the door is a good idea?
Well, the timestamp and everything tells us this is right around midnight. So it's not technically the middle of the night, but it's pretty late in the evening for sure. I'm not crazy about the idea of going to the door, but it's not unreasonable to think that somebody's banging on my door that I'm going to go look out the window and see what that is. So, I think that we've got to be a little bit more lenient on the homeowner here in that, he was reacting based off of the information that he had at the time. Somebody is banging on his door. He's got a front light out there. He's got a easy way to identify who's out there. The challenge that I've got with this, at least from the officer's perspective, is as soon as they made eye contact through that window, the officer drills him with about 10,000 lumens, and now all of a sudden this guy is disoriented.
We'll talk about that in a sec for sure.
So, but yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a problem that he came and investigated. That's what any of us are going to do in our home. We're not expecting this to be a bad guy that shows up. I think that if we live in the fear that any bump on the door is a time to go grab a gun and post up at our high point in our house, that's not a great way to live either.
So I guess though my only concern there is then he kind of did that though because he had a gun in hand. So he was like, no, this is probably bad stuff. So I don't mind him having a gun in his hand. I don't mind him having a gun. Let me say it that way. I don't mind him having a gun. I mean, listen, I keep firearms for home protection. I think we all do, right? And so to have that isn't a bad thing. I know maybe, if you say, hey, the guy had to put on pants or whatever, and I know plenty of people that will keep a holster on their pants that they keep next to the door or, next to the bed or whatever to have that. I also think maybe this is a good argument for us to have some kind of video doorbell, that if something's going on in the front, rather than going out there and seeing with our Mark 1 Mod 0 eyeballs, we look at the camera real quick and go, what the heck is going on at my front door? Not that it's, everybody has to have that, but I think that could have been an off-ramp here.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to say too, John, that, there's lots of ifs and whats that could have happened here on both sides of that door. And I think that's a big one. The homeowner easily could have had, the Ring doorbell, the Simply Safe, all of those different ones that are out there. There's a whole boatload of them out there. They're not crazy expensive. And that could have saved a whole lot of trouble this evening. Now the fact is that not everybody's going to have that. Not everybody's got the Wi-Fi for it or whatever it is for something like that to work. So can't really fault the homeowner for doing that. But I think the thing that if I were to critique something that the homeowner could have done differently there is they could have approached a little bit slower. They could have approached, if you don't have a holster to put that gun in, then put the gun behind your back. It doesn't have to be out in plain view, because if it is a bad guy with a gun and now he sees that you've got one, you've escalated it already as well. So, so the homeowner isn't completely off the hook, but I think we were probably a little bit too harsh on him in the beginning here as well.
Yeah, I agree. And if I can respond to some of the comments we're saying, well, when I said burglars don't generally use flashlights and burglars don't generally ring the doorbell, well, those things are true. I know them from a wealth of experience. I could cite
there's a few exceptions.
National Institute of Justice statistics on things like home invasions. Look it up, and you'll find the vast, vast majority of home invasions being defined as an occupied dwelling where someone forces entry, usually with a firearm, and terrorizes the occupants into doing whatever it is he or she wants them to do, usually money or drugs. The vast majority of those, it's crook on crook, almost always, where there's a dope house, there's a load house, there's a whatever, there's an illegal gambling operation, and other crooks know about it. They know there's going to be dope or money there, so they target that place as a place to go get stuff. And the upside for them is there's a good chance no one's going to call the police on them because the original occupants were doing criminal activity. So with that said, do burglars ring the doorbell to test the water to see if anybody's home? Yes. Do they do it at night? Not usually. They do it during the day, almost always during the day. Most burglaries happen between I think 9 a.m. and 3 p.m.
Yeah.
Because they figure normal humans are going to be off at work doing normal human stuff. The crooks are going to be doing crook stuff. They're going to be riding their bike up to your house, ringing the doorbell. If nobody answers, then they might take a chance and break in. With that said, the flashlight issue, yeah, burglars are going to use flashlights to see around, but they're generally speaking, home invasion is defined as someone breaking into your house. So if this homeowner had given it a second, slowed his roll just a little bit, and again, no problem with him being armed. Of course, he has every right to be armed in his own home. If he'd have slowed his roll for a minute, maybe waited on the stairs and tried to establish some contact with whoever's outside, he still then has the chance that if the door starts to get kicked open, well, now he can train into that door and be ready to act if he needs to, if that person does then make entry. But it could be anyone out front. It could have been an autistic child out front. It could have been a drunk neighbor who thought he was at his own house or whatever. There could have been a million possible things. And pointing a gun at that person who you can identify, I think, is a bad idea.
Well, we're going to get to the pointing of the gun. We're not there yet.
Sure.
I do think, again, so is it completely unreasonable and stupid to come to the door with a gun? No, it's not. Is it completely unreasonable to walk towards your front door? No, it's not. Are there better choices? Maybe we challenge from a place of advantage where we can see better. Maybe we use a video doorbell or something like that. Just some things for us to think through so that we don't put ourselves in these kinds of situations where all these, tolerance errors stack on top of one another and we get these really wicked outcomes. So let's now talk about the flashlight, because of course, as soon as the officer sees there's some movement in that door, he puts a bajillion candela on that, which, you guys know, I love all the candela. I love to see everything I can possibly see. But of course, that means we on video, we can't see what the heck is going on behind it.
Yeah, and as Neil pointed out, odds are the homeowner now is able to see exactly nothing. He can't identify anything because he's been blinded by this flashlight. And Neil, I'm not sure I agree with you. I feel like initially as he walked over, he had a couple of seconds. The lights out front, as you pointed out, are pretty bright. His front porch lights are fairly bright. I feel like he should have been able to see outside, and hopefully, maybe he wears glasses. I don't know. Maybe his eyes were swollen from sleep. Who knows? A million possibilities, but I would like to think that he would look and try to make some identification. There's no one kicking in the door right now. There's no exigent circumstance where he should feel the need to raise a gun at someone, in my opinion. Neil, what do you think?
So I'm going to respectfully disagree a little bit in that I have a similar doorway to this outside of my house, and my outside light is not bright enough. The officer had stepped back off the porch, kind of back into the shadows a little bit. So if you're coming downstairs to, you're woke up out of a slumber, you're coming downstairs to somebody pounding on the door kind of rapidly, it would be my assumption that sounds like there's some sort of urgency going on. You pop around the corner and some guy comes out of the shadows and then drills you with that much candela. I think that's going to add a whole level of complexity to this that we aren't really considering.
Well, and I think, okay, so as a homeowner, do I go, oh no, now I can't see what's going on, and that's a problem? I think it is. Clearly it is. And of course, when we start talking about using a flashlight defensively, that's a feature, not a bug, right? So we want somebody that when we light them up to go, I can't see what's going on behind that. I can't see what's happening there. I understand why the officer, because the inside of the house is darkened, and especially, again, I think it makes sense to me that the officer here, if the officer gets called to a medical thing here, I don't know that he's so worried about what's going on inside the house, but we just have some kind of alarm on the house that I am unknowing of what's going on. Now I got to really see what's happening and see what that motion is. So I understand why he'd want to put some light on it. I would too. I also understand why that would be really disorienting to the homeowner. So again, it's that tolerant stacking of problems.
I would like to be able to talk to this officer, and hey, Mike at ActiveSelfProtection.com, if you're watching this, I'd like to know if he saw the gun in the homeowner's hand prior to lighting him up, because that would make perfect sense. Because if I saw a gun in someone's hand, that would be my first reaction, would be to light them up to disorient them so they can't see me and get a good shot off. I just don't know. We can't know that what it is that he actually saw.
So that segues to where all of the problems happen. So the officer sees, or he articulates that he saw a gun. We don't know what he saw. We can't know what he saw. We don't get to see through the the camera angles and all those things. Now, I think we have to go from the assumption that our homeowner decided to raise his firearm. And I do have a challenge with that. Again, so I get A big bright flashlight, I get it. Again, it's midnight. He's just woken up. He's disoriented. All of a sudden, somebody's outside his house, and now they've got a bunch of candela on him. I don't think the right answer to that is to point a gun at it. Now, if the officer lied and pointed, and the guy never pointed a gun at him, he just decided to shoot him, well, then that's immoral and evil and wrong, and we will get over that. We'll say, no, that's not cool. But given the fact that he made that mistake where he said, oh, this is a flashlight, I can't see what's behind it, it's outside my house, so I'm gonna point a gun at it. I don't think that's smart. I don't think that's probably justifiable, and therefore I think that's where the biggest error happened that then precipitated him getting shot.
Yeah, and we can't know what as you said, we can't know what the officer saw. We can't know what was in his mind. The next question was going to be, could the officer have scooted over to the left real fast and just gotten out of the way and been safe and not have to shoot? Again, maybe. It's a ginormous maybe. Maybe he could have gotten out of the way and not been shot or not been felt pressure to pull the trigger on this guy, but that's unknowable from the angle of the badge cam.
Well, and I think he was kind of trying to get back up to the, on the porch to knock some more and like, hey, I need to get in here. I need to make sure everybody's okay. And then, so he kind of felt that pressure to continue. So I know some folks in the comments on the last one said, wait a minute, why didn't he just back up? He sees a guy, why didn't he just back up and wait? I think that kind of goes contrary to his mission, that he closes with a threat and is called to respond here. So I think that would be kind of counter to what he does. I don't know, man. So I just see here that pointing a gun at something that he had not positively identified was a deadly threat, that he felt worried might be a threat, I think was a big mistake.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the idea that if you pointed a gun at something that you can't identify, you've made a mistake. I think the challenge with this video is it's grainy enough. I can't make it out. Most of the folks that are watching this on their, on their tablet or their phone or whatever small screen that they're on, they can't make that out. So what we have is the word of the officer that he saw this gun pointed at him, and and then it's up for debate. So if the guy pointed a gun at the cop, then yeah, okay. But I also think that there were some options there for the cop as well, that if he's there, if he did know this is a medical emergency, or whether or not he did, we've already discussed that. But I do think that there is some reasonableness to back off just a little bit. In my opinion, I'm an average Joe. I'm not an officer. I've never carried a badge, so I don't know. But I feel like it was a pretty aggressive move to light the guy up with 10,000 candela and then follow it up with a couple of rounds.
Well, the reason I disagree, Neil, about him lighting him up is that officer has a duty to identify what's going on in there at that moment. He has to be able to see what's going on. The only way for now, he's fighting a photonic barrier with those two what appear to be very bright porch lights. So
reasonably bright.
The only way for him to know what it is he's looking at through that window in that moment is to use his flashlight. I don't know if he could have turned it down to make himself more identifiable. That kind of defeats the purpose. So that's just my 2 cents.
But again, we're putting the onus on the homeowner that it's his job to identify the officer while looking at basically the surface of the sun, while the officer gets to light this guy up and do his thing. So I get it, but you're still a private citizen in your own home. You have a reasonable expectation that somebody's not going to shoot you through your window, especially somebody from law enforcement.
Well, and I think that's 100% a good thing. But again, I think the biggest challenge with that is that I do think the excited utterance of the officer, the guy says, "You shot me," and the cop said, "You pointed a gun at me," and the guy didn't say, "No, I didn't." So it didn't come back. So I think their immediate excited utterances kind of established what probably happened there. Is that, okay, so from the officer's perspective, perhaps he maybe could have backed away at the beginning. And I get that the homeowner was, disoriented and he's got this big bright flashlight. I will say, I think I stand on, for all of us, we don't point firearms at things that we've not positively identified as a deadly threat. That ID is a big deal. And so, okay, so there's this big bright flashlight or something like that. And that's disorienting and a problem. I don't think the answer to that is to point a gun at it. And so when somebody points a gun at me, regardless of anything else, so again, as whether I'm an officer or private citizen, if I'm doing justified things, if I'm not committing crimes and those kinds of things, if somebody points a gun at me, I'm gonna defend myself from that. And so I think that's where that really ends up at the end of things. Now, did the officer do everything right? Man, I think maybe it could have been maybe some things better. Did the homeowner do a huge egregious wrong here. I think he made some errors. I don't think it was as bad as I initially said, and so I understand why maybe we would make those errors, but those little errors compounded on each other to get us to this place. And I really think where some of my frustration was at the beginning was because this guy ends up screaming at the officer and yelling at him and telling him he did the wrong thing, and then ends up suing. I personally, I think in this particular case that does frustrate me a little bit, because I don't think it was a big enough error on that they were negligent in what they did or whatever. But I do think what we have to make sure that we remember here for all of us is okay, we do our best to make reasonable, responsible decisions. Sometimes a cacophony of errors happens, and that gets us to the place where one or the other of us have shot somebody we really shouldn't have shot, or we got shot when we didn't need to get shot. Now we get to that place where we get our first aid going. I will say, I think from both sides here, both the officer and the private citizen start arguing with each other when there's a man with 2 gunshot wounds going on here.
Bad luck.
Let's stop arguing with each other, and let's get together at this point, especially the guy says, call the cops, and the officer right here says, I am the cops. Okay, we've established that problem. Fine, come help me deal with my gunshot wounds right now, rather than arguing at each other.
Yeah, I think I might have said this during the initial video as well. I don't like, as an officer, you got to be professional. You have to maintain a professional bearing. If you've now realized, okay, this isn't a burglar, this is the homeowner. A terrible tragedy has happened here. There's been a mistake made by whomever. Don't argue with this guy, officers, deputies. Just say, hey, look, I need to get you help. I need to get you help. I need to get you help. Call for EMS. Start treating the wound or whatever else. I think the overarching principle here, the reason this channel exists is to help people learn lessons, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's civilians. The lesson from the homeowner side here, I think, clearly is if you hear a bump in the night, being aggressive towards it and going towards it maybe not be the best idea. Maybe if you hear a bump in the night, the idea is to get on the phone to 911, go ahead, grab your firearm and stay a distance away from that door and try to make contact with whoever or whatever it is and try to figure out, is this a crook? Is this some lost person? Is it a drunk neighbor, or is it a cop?
I also think that, okay, maybe I put myself between my family and whatever potential there is. Sure. So there's places and spaces for that. And again, I do think in this day and age, the other part of this, if we trace this all the way back to the beginning, this was a mistaken notification from an app. And so all of us, goodness gracious sakes, talk to our family about our cell phones and our smart devices and make sure that we're not putting ourselves in this. I think thankfully this is a ridiculously rare kind of problem, and I'm grateful for that. But let's make sure we've talked all that through, that if we have apps on our phone that can send emergency alarms, and those are out there, I even have some on my phone, to make sure that we know what they are doing and that we don't end up in these kinds of problems. And I just want to say, Mike, I appreciate the expertise. Neil, I appreciate your expertise as well. And again, to all of our viewers, I apologize for lousing this one up in the original. Should have been a little bit kinder with the homeowner. Let's do better, all of us in the community.